So my name is Lindsay Klarman, and I'm the Executive Director at the Hearing, Speech, and Deaf Center. So HSDC has 5 areas of programming. It has deaf and hard of hearing advocacy, and that can be anything from job training to providing support if there's discrimination in the workplace or people are looking for resources if they're homeless or low income. We have interpreting services, so we provide interpreters in any setting that you can imagine. School settings, going to the doctor, needing interpreters in the courts. And then we also have our clinics. So we have an audiology clinic, so you come and get your hearing tested. We fit you for your hearing aids. We have a speech clinic, and that's not necessarily connected to deaf and hard of hearing. We do lots of different speech services from infant to elder. And then we also provide education services. And we have 0 to 3 early intervention services, as well as a preschool that serves 3 to 5-year-olds. So I grew up with a deaf grandmother, and I always tell this story about how Grandma used to take care of me and my 2 stepbrothers when we were together in the summer. And back in the day, you would have to go to places like the bank to physically do things. We didn't have the technology back then. And so we would go to the bank with her, for example, and one day the teller was not there that she usually worked with. And so she had to, sort of mime and gesture, well, I'm deaf, and we have to write back and forth. And she finished her banking, and she walked out with all of us, the 3 little ducklings following behind. I think I was maybe about 5 or 6. Okay. And the teller ran out after us and said, oh, wait a second, what are you doing with these kids? And she said, well, I'm going to get in the car and drive. And they said, well, you're deaf, you can't drive. And so that was an aha moment where I realized our family was different. So really our job at HSDC is to remove those communication barriers. And that could be for anyone. If there's a hearing business who wants to hire a deaf person, they might be taken aback and feel like it's overwhelming to try to schedule an interpreter. What am I going to do when I have this deaf employee? They're the only deaf employee that I might have. And so oftentimes you'll see discrimination show up in very subtle ways. So by not allowing that deaf person to have that interview, they have now been discriminated and they're taken out of that talent pool. That's one example of the discrimination. The other discrimination is not providing that interpreter in the work setting once the person actually gets hired. So oops, we made a mistake. We didn't have an interpreter. So we're going to excuse that deaf person from this experience, but everybody else gets to continue with that experience. There's also things, with our education programming. A lot of times people think that just because a child is in an ASL immersion school, that they're not getting the speech and language or they're not learning English, and that's not true. There's no written form of American Sign Language. So by default, a lot of our deaf and hard of hearing people are bilingual, right. Because they're reading and writing in English, but they're signing in American Sign Language. And so we like to say that, our agency is for everyone. If I go around and ask people, do you wear a hearing aid? Do you know somebody who wears a hearing aid? Do you have a family or a friend or a colleague? Probably everybody would raise their hand. About 2.8% of Washington State have people who have hearing loss between the ages of 25 and 65. I think communication is a fundamental core piece of who we are as humans. It sets us apart from the animal kingdom, right? There's nothing like the ability to be able to connect with another person. And we're seeing that all over the place in different industries. Businesses are constantly looking for ways where they can connect with their employees. There's a lot of focus on social emotional work with young children and making sure that they are emotionally developed so that they can navigate the school world later on. And so the why is communication. If you are a grandparent and you don't have your hearing aid and you can't have that conversation with your child across the dinner table, where is that intergenerational meeting? It's really about making sure that that connection can happen, and we do that through our language. And that's what HSDC is here to do. We're here to bridge that gap in language and communication.